Recording in progress.
Okay. And they should be. I see people joining us today. I'm signing in American Sign Language. One of the questions I get all the time is are there different sign languages? And because sign language is a visual language, you have to actually be in close contact with people. So sign language actually varies more than spoken language in a lot of cases because it's that visual connection that people need. So New Zealand sign language is very different from American Sign Language. And Tina is coming to us from New York. And we are you're not in New York? I thought you were RTA.
I'm in Illinois.
Oh, you're in Illinois now. Oops. I thought I knew it was Rochester. Yeah, it's Motaku Hei, which is Maori for oops, my bad. If we're going to be there. Tina is a latent deaf adult and has been well known for her technology. And we are very happy to have her today. And with that, I am going to shut up and put it to the expert. Tina, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's hope this works. So you should see Power in Your Pocket. There's an app for that, correct, on the screen? Awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and start. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to put a link in the chat box for the handouts. Oops. Let's try that again. Hang on a minute. Sorry for this technical difficulty. I really wanted you all to have the handouts because I don't want you to have to be writing furiously while I am doing this presentation. I wanted to make it very easy for you. So if you click on the link in the chat box, you will be sent to a PDF of today's presentation. You can take notes on it, you can type on it, you can share it, whatever you'd like. So without further ado, happy lunchtime to you in New Zealand. It's funny, Lisa and I were going back and forth about the dates because you guys are ahead and trying to figure out the time change. So I'm happy that I'm where I needed to be at the right time. And as Lisa mentioned, I am Tina Childress. I am a late-deafened adult. I have bilateral cochlear implants. I am also fluent in ASL. I love technology. One of my nicknames is Techie Tina, but I was just not crowned. I probably shouldn't say that after the Queen just passed. I was given a new title, and my new title, I'm calling myself a communication engineer. Right? So my first major was engineering. It was actually computer engineering, but I've realized that, you know, since I became an audiologist and when I started losing my own hearing and loving technology, that in my head and in my heart, I'm still an engineer. So I'm going to call myself a communication engineer going forward. So today's topic is apps, how to use apps, how to use that power in your pocket. And so I'll be talking about a few different things. I'll be talking about how different devices have different accessibility options, things that you want to look for. I will give you a resource to look at a bunch of apps, because I know in an hour, it's impossible really to discuss in depth a whole bunch of apps. But I think there are some that I'm going to highlight. I think with the pandemic and with people behind being masks, those of us that are deaf or hard of hearing, and I know hearing people also have really struggled with communication. And so I am going to highlight some of the different speech to text options that are out there, because I know I probably use my speech to text app every day. So in addition to things like email and text and things like that, I use speech to text a lot. So let's go ahead and start. So, when it comes to the different platforms, and for purposes of this presentation, I'm only going to be talking about iOS, so Apple devices, so iPhones, iPads, things like that, and Android devices. They just have the most market share, and so I figured I'm going to get the best bang for my buck, if you will, if I focus on those. I know that there are other devices that run things like Linux, Linux, that there's BlackBerry, there's Windows and all of that, but I'm going to focus on iOS and Android. So this next slide to me is busy, but it's also kind of fascinating to me, because what this represents is the number of users that use iOS devices versus Android devices. And so they both came out around the same time. So Apple devices came out or iOS came out in about 2007. Android devices, I thought it was much later. They came out in 2008. Now, this chart starts at 2012. And why is that? It's because in 2012, we saw Android actually surpass use of devices over Apple devices. Now, this is worldwide. Okay, so I found that very interesting, because I did an informal poll. I think it was on Facebook a few years ago. And I just put out a poll asking my deaf and hard of hearing peers, what platform do you use? So even though this chart, so we're looking at the blue lines representing Android, and then the black lines are representing iOS. So even though you see worldwide that Android is more in use, in my circle of deaf and hard of hearing friends, it's Apple devices or iOS. And it was like twice as many iOS devices compared to Android devices. So if you want to type in the chat, I'm just curious, how many, can you tell me, are you team iOS or are you team Android in terms of the device that you use? And I'll just keep talking through as you guys start typing. So I am going to start talking about different accessibility options that you would see on iOS. So if you didn't know, under accessibility, did you know that there is something called sound recognition? So there is a feature under accessibility on your phone where it can detect certain sounds, and you will be notified on your Apple Watch, which is really great. I'll talk about the new operating system that's just recently come out, because it's a little bit more customized now. So then the second bullet point is talking about personal audiogram. And so that's where people can actually enter in their audiogram or their hearing levels. And then they can customize the sound based on that. Now, that's usually people that are using AirPods or something like that, and are able to modify it that way. If you have hearing loss on only one side, so for example, you have hearing loss on the right side, but you're wearing headphones and the signal that's coming from your media source or your phone is in stereo, you're not going to hear anything on this side. So there's a setting that will take it and put it all to the left side. It will combine both channels. So you have a right channel and you have a left channel when something is true stereo, and they just put them together and they can route them one way or the other. And so sometimes people don't realize that that's something that they can do. So thank you for your responses. I think we're still seeing, well, what I'm seeing here is about equal, maybe even a little bit more with Android. Now I know I'm going to go back a little bit. iOS is very popular and kind of ingrained in the deaf and hard of hearing community because they came out with FaceTime first, right? And so they were also the first ones that really came out with a front-facing camera on their devices. And so people that are deaf or hard of hearing just kept with that. Now, the irony of it is it really wasn't until like last week with the release of iOS 16 that now you can have captions with FaceTime. So this whole time from 2007 until 2016, there were no easy captions or native to iOS captions available for FaceTime. So finally, that has happened. All right, so I'm going to go back up. If you didn't know, if you have tinnitus, which is that ringing or the different noises that you may have in your ear, there's actually a way to play background sounds that can kind of mask or be a little bit louder than maybe the tinnitus sounds that you have in your head. If you use the health app, not only for things like your heart and your pulse and things like that, if you find yourself in really, really noisy settings and you want to know how loud it is, there is a feature in the health app that will measure noise levels. And you can read it just right on your watch. It's pretty cool. So now let's talk about iOS 16. And so actually, I just realized that, so iOS 16 is available currently in beta form here in the US. Lisa, I don't know if it's available yet in New Zealand, but some of the things that are very exciting about it is available there. Okay, awesome. Some of the things that are really exciting about iOS 16 is this new, what they're calling live caption feature. So if you haven't played around with it, so live caption is a setting that you get to when you go under accessibility and then hearing. And with the live caption feature, it will caption any media, like so movies or podcasts or whatever on your iPhone. There is also like a microphone icon. So you press that and then it's a speech to text device. And it will also caption things like phone calls and video calls. So things like FaceTime. So very exciting. You have to do a lot of button presses, I feel like, for doing that. But I think people are going to get used to it. So that's something that people are very, very excited about. Like I was mentioning earlier, you can customize some of the sound alerts. And then also if you have something on your watch and you want to see it on your phone, you can actually mirror that, which can be very helpful, especially if it's very, very small on your watch. Now, at the top, I said you need iOS 16 and iPhone 11. I was actually doing a deep dive about this, and actually you can, if you have an iPhone XS or an iPhone XR, you can upgrade to iOS 16, and it has the right chip in it that will allow you to use the live caption feature. So the link that I have at the bottom is actually, I love lists. And that's the other thing. My friends say that I have chart heart. I have so many lists that I have to have a list of my lists. And so this is one of them. And you'll see a grid and it will list out every iPhone that's ever been made, every iPad, iPad mini, iPad Air, iPad Pro, and it will tell you, is it able to be upgraded to iOS 16, because people are very excited about this feature. So if you're not sure, if your device can use this live caption feature, be sure to check out that link. And I am, if you want to ask questions, feel free to type it in the chat box. I'll kind of try to split my attention back and forth between the two. All right, so now let's talk about Android devices. So for me, I am a big fan of Live Transcribe. I use it all the time, and typically when I am with my deaf and hard of hearing friends, I just pull up my phone, and I love that you can just be like on the screen, and then you press the little icon, and then I usually will hold it. Oh, it's kind of hard to see. But I like to hold it underneath my chin. Sorry, there's a lot of light. Anyway, trust me, there are captions that are coming across the screen, but I like to hold it under my chin when I'm with my friends, because then that way people can read my face, my facial expressions and my lips while they're also reading the captions. Okay, so I have found, I've looked anecdotally at a bunch of different apps, and I find that Live Transcribe is the most accurate now. Everything is at the mercy of your internet connection, whether you're using Wi-Fi or whether you're using cellular service. And if you have poor service, the captions may not come out very well. And it doesn't matter what device that you have. So anyway, that's something that I use. There have been times where I have very purposely chosen not to use my voice. I don't know about some of you that are on the call here, but I feel that when people hear my voice, because I have very clear speech, I was a late-deafened adult, all of that, they assume that I can hear everything. And so, especially when I travel, for me, that has become kind of a liability. I have almost missed flights or connections or gate changes because they forget that they were supposed to tell me if something changes, because it doesn't always show up on the app right away, right? But I have found that if I go up to the counter and I type into my phone and it says, "I'm deaf, please let me know if there are any changes," I have never been forgotten that way. So anyway, if you don't use your voice, or there's a word that's difficult to pronounce, it's really nice that you can have a keyboard option. I think also sometimes people don't also know that within Live Transcribe, there are sound notifications. I know that you can see at the bottom when you're doing transcription, it'll say like crowd or noise or music or something like that. But if you go deeper into the settings, the sound notifications, you'll get just kind of this timeline of knowing when different sounds happen in your environment. And so I actually, when I sleep, I leave my phone plugged in, sound notifications on. And so if there's any kind of alarm or anything like that, it doesn't happen with the strobe light or, what I have set up in my house, but it's audible, then it will set up my alarm clock because it will vibrate with sound notifications. So that's very cool. The other feature that you find on Android, and this is going to be so confusing because they both call it live caption. Android devices have been able to natively caption media and phone calls for a while now. So I think that's really great. So their version of being able to enter in an audiogram, they call it adapt sound. Same idea, you enter in your audiogram and you can customize it that way. And again, also you have mono audio. Okay. So closed captioning. Closed captioning also is a feature that you will find on both iOS and Android devices under accessibility and then hearing. And I don't know if you know this, but I just actually went back and looked at it the other day as I was preparing for this presentation. I've been doing this presentation for years, and I've watched, where it says 2022 in the parentheses. I've actually seen that say 2019, 2020, 2021. And to this day, we are still not seeing closed captions on trailers. which to me, I feel is not very equitable because, hearing people, they watch trailers to decide if they want to spend money to rent or buy a movie. And I feel that, we don't have that opportunity because the trailers are not captioned. So, but most of the movies that you will find on Google TV and Apple TV are now captioned, the shows as well as the movies, which is good. If you use social media, I put some of the more popular, I think, social media platforms up there, and what those links take you to how to turn on the captioning feature on those different platforms, because I just thought it would be nice to just have it all in one place. Now, it can depend on the content creator. The content creator, depending on the platform, has to allow captions to be enabled. If they don't enable it, then you can't do captions very easily. Ideally, we want content creators to create captions before they upload it to whatever platform so that they can correct it for spelling, grammar, things like that, punctuation. But if they don't do that, there is automated captioning that's available. And as with all automated captioning, it all depends on the signal. If you have a content creator who's, doing a video and they're outside and it's really windy, the hearing people are probably struggling to hear them as well. But the auto captioning is especially going to struggle in that situation. So we're going to talk about some tools that can make captioning a little bit more accurate. So I also wanted to cover connectivity. I think it's really important that as you use your device, that if you use your hearing and you want to have a better signal, it's really important to know what your options are as you're using the apps for whatever purpose that you have. If you are using apps for listening therapy or oral AURAL rehabilitation, you want to have the best possible signal. If you're watching a movie and you're on a train and it's really noisy, it's great to just be able to stream that media directly to your devices and you can block out all of the sounds around you. So just this may be a review for many of you. So of course, there are streamers and Bluetooth. The intermediary devices are sometimes known as streamers. If you have a Phonak or AB Marvel, you can directly stream, and not only can you stream content from your phone, but you can also be part of a Zoom call, or you can be on a phone call if you have that kind of Bluetooth, because all Bluetooth is not created equal. There are different kinds of Bluetooth that are out there, and I'm not going to go into that deep dive today, but just know that you'll want to consult with your audiologist and probably your user manual to see, do you need to have some kind of streamer or intermediary device to participate in things like video calls. So on the screen are just some examples of some of the products that we see here in the US. Pretty much, I would say every manufacturer has some kind of streamer or a way to connect via Bluetooth. We know that there are specific hearing aids that are made for iPhone. There are some hearing aids that are also compatible with made for Android kind of devices. And so, because there's such a wide range of personal amplification that is out there, I want to make sure that you know that this is possible and you can talk more with your audiologist about that. Another device that I know that sometimes people don't think about using or that they can use, we're going to talk about the bottom row here. These are TV streamers. So if you want to hear your television better, most of the companies, I would say, have some kind of device that you can connect it to your television. You may need to have some kind of splitter so that you can also connect it to the speakers on your TV. because if you plug it into the one speaker, it might cut off the sound for, you know, whoever's watching television with you. Again, talk to your audiologist about that. But it's a great way to just hear things better. You can also connect it to things like your iPad or your tablet or things like that. So the thing on the top, the Phonak Multimedia Hub, this is something that's geared, I would say geared more towards like students. And this could be students in, you know, like grades, you know, 1 through 12. It could also be in college. Basically anywhere where the teacher has some kind of microphone, for example, like it would have to be the Phonak touchscreen. And they're also showing media. So like they're showing movies in class, and they have to also talk into this remote microphone so that the student can hear their voice better. So this multimedia hub allows for that media to go directly to their ears and to their amplification, and they can hear the teacher talking through the remote microphone. So it's a little bit complicated, but for our students, it's made a big difference because we're seeing a lot more schools with smart boards using movies and things like that. And this just gives them the best possible signal. So on the screen, you will see a variety of devices. And I want you to think about the devices that you may be wearing or using, or your significant other is using or wearing. And I want you to think about, okay, if I were to talk on the phone, where am I going to put the phone? Okay. And I'm going to show some dots here in a little bit. And if you have the PDF open, everything, you'll see everything all at once. But I think it's important that people know where their environmental microphone is, because I have been in situations where someone will say, I can't hear with these headphones, but that's because their environmental microphone is up here on the top of their ear. So they actually need to wear their headphones up here versus down here over their ears. The Neptune, which is that green cochlear implant processor that's there. So there's like a headpiece, and then there's a cable, and then there's the clip that has a processor. I watched a parent try to put the phone to the processor, not realizing that the phone needed to be held up to the environmental microphone, which was in the headpiece. So I think that it's important for consumers as well as professionals to have this conversation as opposed to assuming. I don't know how far along New Zealand is in terms of telecoil, if it's like good or bad. I would say Europe is probably the best. I would say the US is getting kind of better, but they're not great yet. But I am a huge fan of the telecoil setting. I encourage all of my peers to turn on or to enable the telecoil setting. On anybody. If I give this talk, I always talk about telecoil because I think it's gotten a bad rap. And I think that if there are hearing healthcare professionals that have been in the field for, you know, like 15, 20 years, they probably are like, telecoil, why do we need telecoil? We have Bluetooth now, or telecoil is not good. And that's just not true. So when you're picking your phone, and you want it to have a good telecoil signal, all phones, I don't know if this is the case in New Zealand, but it is here in the US, our phones have to have what's known as an HAC, which stands for hearing aid compatibility rating. And so I talk about wanting or needing to have a phone that has at least a T3 or a T4 rating, and that means it will be a strong telecoil. And so ways that you guys don't have that there. Okay.
No,
Do you have
we are getting better, or we do have some loop systems, but as they're not always activated, and we really don't do T-coils terribly well at all across New Zealand. I think that they're very good things because I've been around for 30 years. So, and that's all we
awesome.
had. But we don't really have that rating, but I know all the Android phones do have that compatibility here.
Awesome. And I would say the newer iPhones as well have a pretty decent telecoil. But you know, it's funny, like any Apple device is made by Apple. Like every iPhone is made by Apple, but when you look at Android devices, it could be Samsung, Nokia, LG, Google, you know, all of these different things. So it's kind of hard to know. I guess what you could do is look at an HAC rating on a US website just to see what the HAC rating is in the US. And I would assume that it would be the same on a phone that's sold in New Zealand. But I find that telecoils are not only great for access to assistive listening devices out in public or hearing loops or things like that, but I've been in situations like in a noisy environment where I will switch to the telecoil rating and just hold the phone up to my cochlear implant, and all I'm going to hear is the signal from my phone, and it will block out all of the other extraneous sounds. And so that is as a result of something called my mixing ratio. And so what a mixing ratio means is like how much louder is that external output compared to the external microphone on your device. So for example, my mixing ratio is set so that when I switch to the T-coil, I only hear the T-coil signal, and my environmental microphone is turned off so that I don't hear that competing background noise. Some people may want a little bit of background noise or a little bit of awareness of sound. And that's something you would talk about with your audiologist, but that's a feature to think about on your phone. The other great thing about telecoil, and so if you have maybe a phone that doesn't have Bluetooth, if you have a hearing aid or a cochlear implant that doesn't have Bluetooth, then there are plenty of, you know, those out there. Like for example, I have advanced bionics processors. I'm still using Harmony processors. And so I don't have access to Bluetooth easily with my processors, but I do use this thing that's on the right-hand side. So this is called an amplified Bluetooth neck loop. And all it is, it's something you put it around your neck. That's what they call it, neck loop. And so my phone would communicate to that receiver via Bluetooth. And then the signal is sent to my cochlear implants via the telecoil setting. And so this is universal for any device that has a telecoil setting. Some of the streamers that are out there, or I should say all of the streamers that are out there are proprietary. You can say, oh, I have an Oticon streamer. I see that you have Phonak hearing aids here. Why don't you try my streamer? It's not going to work. However, if both the hearing aid, like the Phonak hearing aids and the Oticon hearing aids have telecoil, they could use this product. So it's not that expensive, and it just, again, brings the signal really close. So I really appreciate it. All right, let's do our deep dive into the apps. So I'm gonna start out with my lists. And when I first started these lists, the one on the left is the first list that I created. And so that would have been 2007 when iOS first started coming out. Because I remember I was not one of those people that stood out in line for like 12 hours to get the first iPad at the Apple Store. But I am pretty much an early adopter, and I did have that first iPad. And I remember thinking, oh, you know, you would get notifications when new apps came out and when new features were happening and updates were happening. And I started like keeping a list. I'm like, oh, that app would be really great for auditory training, or oh, that app is accessible because it has captioning. You know, back when the iPads first came out, there were so many apps that did not have captioning. And so that was a real problem. And of course, now that's something that's, you know, ubiquitous. They all do now. And so I started categorizing these apps, and it's grown into hundreds of apps. I do need to update it a little bit. It can be a little bit of labor of love. But you will see on the right, you will see all of the different categories that the apps that people tell me about or apps that I found. I will put them into one or more of those categories. And so I have a list for Apple devices, and people asked me to start a list for Android devices as Android devices became more prevalent. So when you click on one of those lists, you will see a screen that looks like this. So all the way on the left, you will see the logo for the app. Sometimes it looks like it's not working, and that's because the developer changed the logo. You will see the title, and it's blue because it's hyperlinked. So if you click on it, it should take you right to the iTunes store or the Google Play store so that you can download the app. You will see the cost, and that can fluctuate. So that's just a snapshot at that point in time when I started the app or when I started this list. You'll see a short description. Sometimes the description is something written by me, my thoughts. If you see quotation marks, that means that I probably just copied and pasted it from their app store, their little blurb. Then you will see the category that it's in. So for example, this first live transcribed voice to text, you will see that it's in two categories. It's in accessibility as well as captioning. You will see the website. So if you're having problems with the app or you want to contact the developer, I just went ahead and added the website there. And then the last column indicates when I added that app. And so the most current apps are at the top. So if you're thinking, oh, okay, I checked Tina's app list maybe 6 months ago, let's see what she's added. Okay. And so when you go to the list, I'm going to go back a slide. When you go to the list, down here at the bottom, so hopefully you guys see my cursor right now. Down at the bottom, you're going to see little tabs. And the tabs correspond to the different categories that I was talking about. You can go to a tab that for listening therapy and see all of the apps that I have, the most current one at the top. Or if you go to the tab that's called Master List, that has all of the apps all in one place. But again, the most common or the most recent apps are at the top. So I know a lot of people go to that master list. I should probably put that in the front. But they go to that master list so they can see all of the apps. It doesn't matter what category, the most recent ones are going to be at the top. Okay. All right, I'm going to go on. So let's talk about some of my favorite speech to text apps. So if you are on, this is for iOS, if there is a little asterisk next to the name of the app, that means it's available on both iOS and Android. And so here in the US, and especially amongst my friends, I would say the most popular app is Otter AI. Maybe with this new iOS 16 that's coming out, people will be using that more. iOS is free up to 300 minutes a month. And then you would have to pay subscription service if you wanted more minutes. Now, one thing about Otter that that people need to be aware of is that Otter actually records the conversation, if you didn't know that. And so there might be a privacy issue for some places. So you want to make sure that you are very deliberate and very careful in the way that you use Otter, because you wouldn't want to be accused of recording a conversation illegally. Otter was actually developed for reporters, and it was supposed to be used for interviews. It was not designed to be an access tool, but that's just kind of how what it became. So Otter, I think, is a good product. Some people just use regular notes on their iPhone, and they just press the microphone to transcribe what's being said. There's a new app that came out of Australia, your neighbor, called NAL Scribe. And it's another app for iOS. It's free. One cool thing about NAL Scribe is that you can use it without an internet connection. Now, it's not going to be as accurate as when you have an internet connection that, they can send all of the information to the cloud and come back. But in certain, there are certain times, you're in the subway or you're in the basement of a school and there's no Wi-Fi signal. This may be able to help you in a pinch. Make It Big is an app where no matter how many letters that you type on the screen, it will fill the screen. So if you are just saying, stay home, it's going to be big letters on the screen. So I know some deaf people that don't use their voice will type, I would like a, a decaf latte with Splenda. And that's what they show on their screen, and it's easily read. So that's something that you can use. Another app that is used here quite a bit in the US, is one called Ava, and that is also available for iOS and Android. And so you could do just kind of one-on-one speech to text, but there's another application at Ava, which I'll show you in a moment. If you have an Android device, again, I've talked quite a bit about Google Live Transcribe. I think it's great. Buzzcards is another app that I like because you can actually save the message that you typed. So if you order the same thing every time you go out for coffee, you just have to press that one message and it just pops up on your screen. You don't have to type it every time. And so Cardzilla is kind of the same idea about making the text bigger, and you can also save some of your messages on Cardzilla. So that one is pretty good. If you are looking for an app that not only does transcription, but also does translation, Google Translate and Microsoft Translator are two products you might want to take a look at. And so with Google Translate, you can speak in one language and then you could see the output in another language. Now, when you're using Google Translate, someone has to read your device. They might be reading over your shoulder, or you're like doing it and then you have to turn it. What I like about Microsoft Translator is that you can actually split the screen. So you could be face-to-face with someone and you can do this translation kind of live and on the fly. So those are two products that are kind of useful in certain situations. Now, if you're in a group setting and you are having a hard time, let's say you're in a group of 4 people, and so you're the 5th. And so there's 4 people that are sitting out there. Both Ava and Microsoft Translator can work like this. Each person has to download the app, either Ava or Microsoft Translator. Each person has to join what they call like a conversation. And then, so for Ava, if you're using Ava, the 4 other people that are around you, when they talk into their phone, that guy over there might be red. That guy straight ahead might be blue. That guy's going to be green. This guy over here is going to be yellow. I'm going to be pink. And so as each person goes around and talks into their phone, it will indicate who's talking. So that can be very helpful in noisy and group settings. You can do the same kind of thing with Microsoft Translator, but it's not with the fancy colors. You'll see a name, and I think you'll actually see a name also with Ava, but it's the same thing. Because each person is speaking into their phone, it will separate the speakers and you will know who's talking. Now, for both of these apps also, what's kind of cool is that they work on any device that has access to the app or a browser. So for example, you could have Ava, I could be using my phone with Ava, but my friend in Boston, or let's say New York, because that's where Lisa thinks I'm from. So if I could be talking in my phone here in Illinois, but my friend is in the conversation on their computer. You can mix and match things too. And the same thing for Microsoft Translator. So you can use phones, Chromebooks, tablets, whatever you need. So that can be a very powerful tool. Now, I talked earlier about the fact that, the accuracy of captions is only as good as the input. So when I do a presentation, I always use some kind of external microphone, because it will make it easier for you to hear me, and it will also make the captions be more accurate because my voice is this close. When people are just talking into their computer, the sound has to travel many more, like a much further distance to get to the computer microphone versus like this. And so this obviously, well, not obviously, this is a wired lapel microphone. I have a cable underneath my shirt. Normally, I would be using this microphone, which is what you see on the left-hand part of your screen. You can see it's about as big as my pinky. And so this is a Bluetooth microphone that I just clip on my shirt. I didn't realize it was dead until maybe 15 minutes before this webinar, which is why I'm not using it. Normally, that's what I would use, because what will probably happen is I'll forget that I have this wired lapel, and I'm going to stand up and like rip my shirt or something like that. And so anyway, I feel it's really important to have, especially if you're doing a lot of webinars or meetings and stuff like that. If you have someone in your audience that's deaf or hard of hearing, I always recommend some kind of external microphone. So a wired lapel microphone you can get for $10 US on Amazon. The Bluetooth microphone is more like 100, but there are other products that are out there. But it's so convenient and it's so easy that it does a really great job. The third picture that you see is something called, what do they call that? A shotgun microphone. And so if you still have a headphone jack in your phone, and if you don't have a headphone jack, there are adapters. But when we were, in lockdown, and, if we went out in public and people were in masks and people had to be 6 feet away, it was really hard sometimes for phones to be able to capture that other person's speech. But if I had a shotgun microphone that I could direct at the speaker, then the captioning was a lot more accurate. So I just kept it, in my purse and with my phone all the time. Okay. Some other accessories that are kind of fun and cool. So this one on the left is a phone magnifier. And so I've been to conferences where, multiple people want to see the captioning that's on my phone, but my phone is only so big. But then I pull this thing, it's like super flat. It's like a notepad of paper, and then you kind of open it up and you set your phone in the back, and then everything is magnified to like 8.5 by 11. So, and those are super inexpensive, $15 US. You can find them, but and sometimes I'll put my phone there and just watch a movie, and so it's really nice to have. The one on the right. So you remember how I was showing you how I hold the phone underneath my chin. If I know I'm going to be talking for a long time to a lot of people who are deaf or hard of hearing, I may pull out my phone holder and just put my phone there and just walk around with this thing. So all kinds of devices out there. Another accessory that, if you're going to be using apps for things like sound notification, and you want to be alerted to those notifications, and let's say your hearing aids are out or your cochlear implants are out, and you have very little residual hearing. The one on the left, the Serene Innovations Cradle, that one will actually detect the vibration of my phone. And when my phone vibrates from a notification, it will light up, and the pillow shaker will also vibrate. So this is what I use for an alarm clock. I set alarms on my phone, and that's what I use. Now, I know that many deaf or like hard of hearing people like to put their phones underneath their pillow or in their pajamas when they want to use it as an alarm clock. And I have to really warn you about that, because phones were not meant to be smothered by things like pillows or clothing, and it can get very, very hot. And, we wouldn't want you to cause a fire. So I always try to tell and warn people about that, because I feel like hard of hearing people do that a lot. They're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to hear the signal. I'll keep it close. But when you do that, it's not safe, especially if you are using a charger, the little cube, or a cable that you bought at the gas station in a pinch. You would not want to keep that close to your body. It can make your phone very hot. It can even damage your battery. So you want to use those very sparingly. So the device that you see on the right is by a company called Bellman and Symphone. And so rather than sensing vibration, it will sense when your screen turns on. So that little egg thing sits on top of your screen. And when, an alert, your phone lights up, then your bed might vibrate, okay? Or your pillow might vibrate. Are any people here content creators? Like, you make videos and put them up on YouTube or Instagram or anything like that? These may be some cool tools for you. You remember before how I was talking about social media, and it would be great if the content creators actually did the video with captions embedded. Well, these are two great tools to make that happen. So Clips is available on iOS and it's free. AutoCap is available on Android. And I want to say it's like up to 5 minutes for free. And then you have to do a subscription or pay per video after that. Now, the way that you do it is you have your phone and you're getting ready to, record yourself in a video. You're going to press the live subtitles or live captioning feature. And when you talk, it'll pick up your voice and it will embed it into the video. Okay. Now, when you're done with your video and you stop recording, you always want to look at your video and see what it looks like. Well, then you can also go in and you can edit the captioning. So you can make sure that the spelling is correct, punctuation, all of that. And then when that's done, then you can go ahead and upload it to, your social media account. So I always recommend to my friends to do that. You can use apps like this if you want to make a video to send to your family. You can use these kind of apps to make social stories. So like, when we have kids that come in for a hearing test, they might be a little bit anxious. We actually did kind of a video where we walked around the office and talked about the different parts of the office, but we used this app so that the captioning was embedded and it was accessible. Okay. If you like music, there are apps that are out there that can listen to the music, on your phone or on the radio, or, like satellite radio you might have in your phone, and it will listen and pull up who's singing, the name of the album. Sometimes it'll even pull up lyrics if they're available. And so I find this really, really helpful. So I have 2 teenagers. And so sometimes I'm like, what was that word? Or what are you listening to? And it's nice to be able to use an app like this to know who's singing. So this is iAngel Sound and Melodic Contour is just one example of a listening therapy kind of app that's out there. There are many, many, many of them that have been developed. Oh, I forgot to mention, when it comes to my app list, you may find that there are apps that are no longer available. Like, you click on that hyperlink and it sends you to the iTunes store and it says it's not available. Well, that happens because every day apps are being developed and every day apps are being what they call sunset, meaning they're no longer being supported. And so if you update your OS, you may end up losing your app or the app functionality. And I would say that when it comes to some of these listening therapy apps, a lot of them have kind of come on the market and then the developer decides they don't want to do it anymore. So be aware that sometimes that's not going to be available. So with iAngel Sound, what I like about it is you can work on a bunch of different skills. I love the apps for listening therapy that also track progress, and that's something you can do with iAngel Sound. The melodic contour identification, this app kind of kicks my butt. I grew up very musical, and music can still be very hard for me. I do much better with familiar music. And so I appreciate this app challenging me to work on my listening skills through my cochlear implants. So this one is kind of cool. And then of course you have apps that can help, you know, that you can change things on your hearing aids or cochlear implants. You can stream content through the app. You can change settings like volume. You can change program from quiet to noise. You can, you know, see how much battery you have left. And then of course there's some apps also and amplification that you can locate your device. Now, the thing about locate your device is your device cannot be dead. The battery still needs to be on, and it had to have at one point actually connected with your phone. So I know that I've heard parents that get really mad because they think, oh, I have this like GPS or whatever on their hearing aid or cochlear implant with their app. But if the app, if the device is dead, if the cochlear implant or the hearing aid is not on, it's impossible to locate. It'll give you the last location, but it may not give you the current location. Okay. Do any of you ever connect your devices to the Internet of Things, meaning things that like smart home products? You know, I've had friends who are like, I need to turn off this whole Internet of Things because they're hearing every time the Ring doorbell goes off or every time Alexa's talking to them. I mean, it can all be connected. Some people want that, and that's possible with many devices now. Many of these apps also will have like the manual or maybe some troubleshooting tips, which can be very helpful. And some people have, or some apps have a place for you to also journal what you're hearing. So that's kind of cool. All right, so I am going to end this presentation. We have like 4 minutes left, right, Lisa? Ish. Okay, so, okay, are you gonna say something?
No, I was going to say if you're available, if people want to ask questions afterwards, we don't have to end exactly at 9 o'clock your time, but it is getting late and about my bedtime.
It's okay. So I'm going to talk to you about some other resources. So if you didn't know about New Zealand Relay, I didn't know that you guys had this kind of all-encompassing umbrella for all of these varieties of different services. So if you need to, you know, make a phone call or use video relay, you would all do that through NZ Relay. All right. So this, oops, sorry. This is the list of my lists. So if you go to the top where you see the website up there, you will see all of the different lists that I have created, that I've shared with people. There's many different topics, which some of them I'll highlight here in a moment. But just lots of different resources that I've developed over the years, just kind of all in one place. So this resource became very popular during the pandemic because people were trying to figure out, especially with remote learning, how to make it accessible for students that are deaf or hard of hearing. And so what I did across the top, you will see a variety of different products. Some of them are Google products like Google Docs, or Live Transcribe is even up there. But then on the right, you will see more speech to text apps. And so down the y-axis, or going vertically, what I did is I indicated which ones work on iOS, Android, Mac computers, Windows computers, which ones are free, which ones can translate. And so you will see all of those different features down the side. And so you could be like, oh, I have an Apple device. Let's see what apps are going to be compatible with my Apple device. So that's one list. Another list that I developed is what I call Zoom captioning options. But, you know, really this could apply to any video conference platform, but now most video conference platforms, I would say, have the ability to, to show captions, which is very nice. I still feel like Zoom is the most accessible with the ability to multi-pin and to multi-spotlight, and just having the webinar feature, I think is really great. I have a blog site is what I like to call it, because it's kind of a combination of things. And if you would like to read some of those blog posts, I don't blog a whole lot, not like some other bloggers, but if I think there's a topic that's really important, I will blog about it. And then the social bookmarking site can be very overwhelming, but for however the 20+ years that I've been on the internet, I saved all of my bookmarks, and because I like to categorize things, I categorized it on there. So if you are looking for role models with hearing loss, if you are looking for books with deaf and hard of hearing characters, there's all of these different topics that are on there that you can look at. And with that, I am done, and I will stop sharing, and I would love to answer any questions that you guys have. So I'm seeing people responding about the iOS versus Android, and from this group, there were more Android people.
From an
I'm glad you
audiologist.
enjoyed it, Leonie. But did I say that correctly? Leonie?
Leonie, you're correct.
Leonie, thank you.
From an audiologist perspective, I always use an Android because if I need to troubleshoot, it's always going to be an Android. It's never going to be an Apple device.
Yeah, I would say, and I think part of that is just Android can look so different from phone to phone, and especially with Bluetooth. It can be very different. And ASHA, the Android platform for connecting for Bluetooth, can be a little bit finicky.
Really do like the social bookmarks from just an organizational point of view. It gives us a lot of things that we can add to our social media platforms that really do add value, because I think so often hearing, according to the New Zealand government, is the least accessible of all the disabilities in New Zealand. We are I know, that's what I said.
That's no good.
Not good. But we often, hearing impaired people often don't consider themselves disabled. And so we don't get put into that space, and we don't really advocate from a disability point of view. And we haven't had the American with Disabilities Act, but we've just got our own disabilities minister. And with that, we should be able to get accessibility, which is highly important.
Yes.
So.
I mean, it's a whole, I don't know about New Zealand, but here in the US, there are so many businesses that have closed because they cannot find workers. Are you finding the same thing there?
Absolutely.
And people that have a disability, they want to work. And it's not that we cannot work, it's that we are not given the accommodations that we need to fulfill our job. And so hopefully that will improve, maybe having a conversation about the value of people that are, hearing impaired, and what they can do for the economy can be a really good thing with some simple things,
Yes, because I think from a disability perspective, we're probably the most cost effective.
Okay.
Give us
but, that's so interesting, because when you think about people as they get older, after they turn 50, their hearing starts to decline. They're saying that by like 2050, we're going to have a lot more people that are senior citizens, and they're all going to have hearing problems. And so you can't avoid that. And so by having things in place now, you won't be scrambling when that all happens and people don't know how to use captioning, or, don't have visual alerts in public spaces and things like that.
I agree. It's definitely time, and the World Health Organization's report certainly gives us some good guidelines around that. So as a Michigan girl, I should have known that you were from Illinois. So I do apologize since we are neighbors. Well, not anymore. But I do thank you for your time, and please come over and visit. We'd love to have you.
I
You know,
would love to. I need to do a tour on that side of the world. My family is from the Philippines, and so I want to bring my kids there at some point. It'd be great to be out there. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm so glad that you learned something. If you have any questions, my email address is on the handouts, and please feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll help you out if I can.
Right. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. And good night.
Yes, thank you. Okay, bye-bye.